Hey everybody, welcome back to Electric Cafe. Today's video is an album review on Pet Shop Boys' 1993 album, Very. Um, Here's still my original cassette from back in the day. Excuse me. I was 17 when Very came out. Probably one of my most anticipated albums during those years. During those really impactful years of, excuse me, of the early 90s. Excuse me. I think I'm coming down with a little bit of a cold with the weather changing. Um, but this came out when I was 17, and I was a big Pet Shop Boys fan that whole time, all the way from Please came out when I was roughly like 9 or 10, and all the way through, but especially the years 1990 with Behavior and all the way through till Very um, was my favorite time, and especially the singles in between, like DJ Culture and Was It Worth It and How Can You Expect to Be Taken Seriously. There were so many great remixes in those times, and it's fitting that I'm wearing my Detroit Techno shirt in honor of some of the remixes on some of these. Where I first heard, quite a bit of, remixes from Kevin Saunderson and Marshall Jefferson remix being boring, and even though he's from Chicago, I suppose, but just house and techno was so intertwined with a lot of Pet Shop Boys remixes in those days. It's all right, the track Pet Shop Boys is a classic Chicago house track from Sterling Void in 1986 or 87, I think it was, and then Pet Shop Boys used it for Introspective in 1988, and just was the biggest fan of Pet Shop Boys during those times. I even used to dress like Chris Lowe back in like 1990, 91 when I was like 14 and 15 with the London Fog trench coat and the normal baggy jeans, Guess jeans, and Champion hat and the glasses and the Stussy glasses and the Stussy hat and stuff. I tried to look like Chris Lowe back in the day, especially around 91, 92 when I was 15 or 16. This is the original CD as well. It's got the textured CD on it, which was kind of a unique cover for the time, unique color for sure. Definitely stood out. Different kind of plastic, case that I'd never seen before. I don't think. I mean, it is fairly standard, except for this as far as the color, but just having this, not the normal clear plastic was unusual for the time, but to match it with everything is kind of cool. But I was such a big fan in this time, and everything. My music taste was rapidly changing in when I was 17, 18, and unfortunately this was probably the last time I really, I mean, discotheque or whatever sometimes I'm blanking on the 80s, on the 1997 album name that has Before and Discotheque on there, and that album came out in 97, or 96, but this was kind of like the for me it was kind of like the I wouldn't say the pinnacle of Pet Shop Boys at all, because it's not my favorite album by a long shot. But you could feel the change in dance music changing. Like it was, and I'll talk a little bit about that in the notes of the album and stuff. But I did want to mention a few things before that. But it was just kind of, you could tell kind of the change was in the air as far as like dance music, and dance music was a lot different in 1986 and 87 when Pet Shop Boys first came out with Please, and actually versus 1993 when Very came out. And there's some good and bad about that, and that really affected the sound, and I feel the timelessness of the albums when you look back 30, 35 years. But I've always kind of felt that. I just didn't really know it until as the 90s kind of went through, and it got to the point where I didn't even really look forward to, or even, I think when Home came out in like 2000, I don't know, 2002 or 2003, like I didn't even I didn't even pay attention. I don't even think I got it till like the first few months came out, and then like Minimal came out, and I think that was probably the last one that I actually got that I saw that came out probably that week, and I actually got it. But then every album since then, I just Pet Shop Boys just kind of. It seems like every album has gotten there's less and less songs that I like on it to the point where I haven't even heard the last three albums. I don't even think. Um, you can see up here actually those two framed pictures over here. Those are the flowers on the inside of Home CD cover. I framed those. I like those. I like those pictures. I actually have two on the wall over there as well. But each side of the inside of the CD, I like those black and white pictures. Um, but what's funny about those times is here's actually an old. I used to be in the Pet Shop Boys fan club. The only fan club I've ever been in was Pet Shop Boys when I was like 16, 17, and 92. I guess 92, 93, and it's funny. I'm doing the review on these, and then I still have some of the material from when Very kind of came out, and this is a postcard sort of announcing that Go West was going to be released as a single. And one thing that's just funny in here to see is my old childhood address is on the stamp on here, which is funny to see in itself. But also there's a note on here for the shipping, and it says if this postcard doesn't reach, if undelivered, return to, and it has an address in the UK. Can you imagine these days, like a postcard not reaching its destination and expect to be returned back to the original country? That sounds so funny to me. Like, would they even charge you for return shipping for that, or would anybody care? Would they just toss it away? Like, who's expecting a returned postcard? I don't know. I find that funny from a shipping perspective, and just in general, like somebody's gonna return this. But yeah, you can see Go West, with remixes by Brothers in Rhythm, Farley and Heller, and Kevin Saunderson. So shout out to Detroit Techno there and Kevin Saunderson. But also Brothers in Rhythm did some great remixes during Pet Shop Boys. Dave Seaman, and also Farley and Heller did some remixes for Pet Shop Boys as well, and including this one. But I think there was one other ones they did as well. But Farley and Heller were some well-known house DJs and artists. But also this is part of being in the fan club at the time. They would you got a copy of their quarterly magazine, which was called literally, and this was just show you a couple pictures in here. This kind of talks about the different formats of Very coming out, and also the Relentless CD, which I still never have gotten. I've heard the tracks, and they unfortunately I don't think they're as good as people say they are. Maybe they were back in 1993, but I don't think I heard them till the early 2000s, till they got on YouTube. But yeah, Relentless, I wasn't a big fan of it, and if you see the prices they charge for original copies of Relentless, you'd like flip out. It's just ridiculous. But it also talks about the Go West remixes, and obviously it has a lot of the artwork and also the lyrics in here. It interviews Steve Haig, who's the producer, and then also just one thing. Oh, one thing also I found was I still have the merchandise thing here. You can order the Pet Shop Boys "Can You Forgive Her" T-shirt, and I was kind of surprised. The first thing I wanted to look at was the shipping, just because I was curious about shipping. But to ship a T-shirt in 1993 from the UK to outside of Europe was £10, 50. 10 pounds and 50. 50 pounds, I guess that is, or $21 in American dollars. $21 in American dollars. $21 in American currency. So I thought that seems kind of high for 1983, because if I ship the T-shirt to UK now, it's probably closer to 30, but that's not such a big difference. I thought it would be like $5 to ship a T-shirt back then, but that's pretty expensive. But I'm guessing because it says outside of Europe here, outside of Europe, I'm assuming they're just kind of covering all their bases. Like if somebody ordered one in Antarctica, or you know, I don't know, some kind of crazy country who has like war going on or something like that. They just kind of covered their costs so they wouldn't lose instead of listing all the countries. But you know that could be sort of, you know, it seems like as shipping gets more expensive, they include more and more countries as being different, and maybe in those days, maybe it was just outside country was that price in general. I'm not sure, but when I think of that price and I started buying records from overseas in like late '90s, like I can remember getting packs for probably like 5 to 10 records and probably spending like $10 or $15 at the most. So it's strange to see that pay that seems like a high price for a T-shirt, $21. But anyways, cool like memorabilia. But on this one also it talks about can you be can you be can you forgive her being released, and it has all the formats here, and then it talks about the Crying Game soundtrack in here. Has the lyrics of "Can You Forgive Her," "Hey Headmaster," the B side, interview with Boy George, but also and it has some of the, you know, I guess they did a Radio One interview in here, and there's also some photographs. So there's just some cool memorabilia in here. But one thing I wanted to mention was, I think I was only in the fan club for like 1 year, so I think I either had 3 of these or 4 of these, and I'm missing. I only have 2. I might have a third one somewhere, but I feel like I definitely missed one somewhere. 30 years later, one got lost somewhere along the way. But and it's unfortunate. I was trying to see if it was in there. There's a back of. And I guess since this is issues 11 and 12, it would either be an issue number 9 or 10. They're probably online, so I'll have to check it out. But it's funny because there's letters in there from all around the world asking like Chris Lowe and Neil Tennant like questions or what have you, and they answer them. And in the one there was, in fact, in these two, the ones that are in here, there's a letter from all kinds around the area. It's almost like they just picked them from the faraway places they could choose. But there's one from Canada is the farthest in those two, as far as Western Hemisphere. And the funny thing is, either in 9 or 12, there's one letter from somebody in my hometown at the time in Lancaster, California, or maybe it was Palmdale, California, one of the two cities. And I remember when I got it and we were reading it, and I was like, and I still remember his name because it was like Adam from Palmdale / Lancaster. And then I asked my brother, I said, "Is that your old friend Adam?" And he was like, "That's got to be him," because he was such a huge Pet Shop Boys fan. And so, strangely enough, out of all the letters in America, there was only one letter in America, and it was from my brother's friend when he was younger. Like I think by '93 he was my brother was like a junior or a senior. Actually he was out of school, so he was probably like 19 or 20. So yeah, that was his friend from when they were like 12, 13 years old, like when the Pet Shop Boys first started. So it was just so weird to see of all the letters be represented from probably, I don't know how big Pet Shop Boys were in as far as people mailing them letters, but to their fan club. But it was just really strange to see the only one that came from America was my brother's childhood friend that also liked Pet Shop Boys. That probably helped us get into Pet Shop Boys. I'm not sure who heard it first, but I think my sister played Pet Shop Boys at first. But I'm pretty confident of that. But she was the one who really got us into it. But I still do have my Please cassette as well. So yeah, I'm a big fan, of course, and so it's interesting reviewing this album, 31 years later. But I wouldn't say I'm still honest about my opinions when it comes to music. So there isn't a lot of favoritism I've given to this album. I feel like I've reviewed it pretty strongly, or pretty. With the magnifying glass, I should say, because I want my reviews to be honest, and I want them to be as accurate as I feel, and also to take into account the the 31 years that have gone by, and trying to review this, because I think that's the ultimate thing about music, is when it's timeless and you like it as much as when you heard it the first day you heard it, and I think that's what's really important. And so that's why I'm really doing reviews that are a lot older albums, because also helps me make. I feel like it helps me become a better reviewer, and just practice reviewing stuff like on this video. Me doing this channel is almost like more like a diary than really trying to share my opinions with everybody else, like as if there's tons of opinions on YouTube already, and I'm sure there's way more knowledgeable people that have different experiences than I do with a lot of these albums. But hopefully people find these interesting. But if not, maybe a relative down the line will be like, watch these videos and be like, oh, yeah, Uncle Tim had some good taste in music, or something like that. I don't know, but hopefully, I think it just maybe posterity doing these videos, and also I think, like I said in the video before, like kind of like closing the book on certain albums, and and really maybe not going back to it ever again, in some ways, and with certain albums and things like that, and sort of encapsulating all my experience with that. I mean, this one is a great example. There's quite a lot of physical items that I have with this album, but also a lot of memories, and especially like my dad was a huge fan of this album, and yeah, he was just huge fan of this album. I think the first time I heard this album was actually debuting it with my dad. I'm pretty confident that happened. If not, I probably heard it, and then as soon as he got home from work, like, "Hey, Dad, new Pet Shop Boys album came out. You gotta." And I'm sure he was right after dinner would come in and listen to, because Pet Shop Boys turned out to be his favorite band of all the bands that I showed him, of all the songs that I showed him, of every band. Uh, I think probably Pet Shop Boy was the only one that, if I wasn't looking or if I wasn't showing my dad the music, he would listen to on his own. Like, that's when you knew that I was like, oh, okay, now I can tell that's your favorite band, because you're listening to them and you're even buying their music when I'm not playing it for you. So that was when I knew that, like, that Pet Shop Boys made the biggest impact in the musical time that we spent together. But yeah, let's get into this review. This is a big one. I don't take this one lightly, and hopefully this review isn't too long. But I definitely want to incorporate all my thoughts into this album. So this is their fifth album. Please, actually, Introspective is kind of a dance EP, whatever, and then Behavior, and then Very came out. This was actually their biggest break from album to album when you look at it. I suppose 87, because Introspective is a sort of an EP. You could say that was the biggest time between Actually and Behavior. But I think there is some new material on there, so I think people do think of it as more of as an album, even if it is a sort of a dance extended album, mini EP or mini album, whatever you would call it. So this was actually the longest time in between albums, and dance music has changed a lot. And I think this was sort of their return to making dance music after Behavior was sort of maybe their attempt, and a successful attempt at sort of making a more adult contemporary, but more ballads, which is probably just how their songwriting evolved and things like that, or maybe they just wanted to do something a little different. But there was still some dance music songs in there, but Very is a full on dance album. Even there's really no ballads in here. You could say To Speak Is a Sin might be the only non-dance song on here. Maybe a little bit Liberation, but they still came out with remixes of Liberation. So there's really no... I mean, this is a full-on dance album, and again, dance music changed a lot from 1988 when they did Retrospective in 1993. There's a lot more techno in here. There's a lot more. Um, I don't think there's any really like breakbeat or trance per se, but although there are some like underneath acid lines that are just kind of verging into like trance, and they're kind of using me as like arpeggi, I guess, is it arpeggiators or arpeggios, and there's still a lot of like stabs, like keyboard stabs doing the melodies, like Can You Forgive Her is a perfect example, like like he's doing a lot of lead synths like with his keyboards, and that's probably one of the things that can sound dated, a little bit dated 31 years ago, but the songs are so familiar it's hard to tell how dated they really are. But I feel like a little bit of the techno is a little bit dated, more so than the analog side. But that's an opinion I have about Pet Shop Boys in general, is their move towards digital, and this was kind of the album that sort of did that. I don't think it was a good thing. It was understandable. Most people did it. I understand. I get it in 1993. Like Chris Lowe is not going to be playing on his Fairlight or a emulator or a any kind of Roland gear or sequential or Oberheim or anything like that. But those equipment have so much more analog warmth and just better sound than a lot of the digital stuff in 1993. And in some ways, it would have been kind of interesting to see if they had wrote this album more so on that. But then you think about it, it is newer dance music, so it makes sense to go with newer stuff, and I get it. But what it did for me was like it showed that Chris Lowe is gonna continue to keep using newer equipment, and then also keep renewing old songs. So like if you go to their concert or something like that, even the album before, they're doing a song from the album before differently than how it sounds on the album, and I don't think that works for me, because like for me there's two different type of concert people. There's one that wants to hear, that is really open minded and wants to hear it differently than maybe the album sounded. For me, like, depending on the group, and really it's how technical the group and how dance the group is and what you like about that. And I feel like with dance music it's a little different than like rock music. With rock music you can sort of ad lib a little bit, and I don't think there's some more flexibility there. When you're doing dance music and people are into your albums, and then you do those albums live, and they don't sound the same as the album, I don't think that's a good thing. People heard it how it is, and it's so technical that you kind of want to hear it like how it was. And I'm not saying that that's a rule or anything, but it's a generality that I think holds true for me, for sure. I don't know if it holds true for a lot of other people, but to play West End Girls, for example, or anything that's early or like actually, but I will say actually they did a fairly good job on that the tour before with remaking that. But using new equipment and playing like West End Girls is just I don't know, it just doesn't work for me. It just doesn't have the same fat bass line, it doesn't sound the same, doesn't have the same keyboards, doesn't have the same melody, the same atmosphere. It just it's always going to be a lesser version, and that's unfortunately that's kind of how the Pet Shop Boys have sort of evolved live, and then also that sort of kind of mimics how their albums go, and they just become too digital and too raw. And it's not like I'm expecting them to go back and grab their old equipment and do a new album, but it's just I feel like when they follow the trends so hardcore, that I think they're trying to be new and on the cusp of dance music, that you run the risk of some of it sounding dated, because you're always trying new stuff, and I get it, but it's not like I want them to use safer stuff. But that's just a side thing that I have. But that's kind of my overview of Pet Shop Boys going forward. But that kind of affects this album in some ways. The lineup for this album is fantastic. They obviously engineered and programmed by Bob Crosier, Pete Gladell and Stefan Hogg and Dudley's on here. Sylvia Mason James is singing on here. I mean, they were set up to win on this album for sure. Um, when I think about I think I'll go to the overview of this and kind of jump straight into it versus going to songs. But I'll mention the songs. There's a lot of good songs on here for sure. I think this album has the most catchy dance tracks of any album they've done. Almost every song is very catchy. I mean, probably every song is catchy. I can't think of one that really isn't. It's almost like a techno pop more so than I don't know. They're way past new wave here. They're way past electro pop. They're sort of into a techno pop here, I guess. And forgive me, I'm reading my notes here, so I gotta get my train of thought when I was writing this, but I'll just read them and see what happens. But um, they're probably at their song making peak in many ways. Some of their better songwriting and lyrics are on this album, as far as like the more dance music. The album plays really well through. It's very fast and cohesive. Like there's some 3 minute songs on here. Like I wouldn't normally do this kind of thing. It's like barely over 3 minutes. There's a few 5 minute songs in here, but for a album that has 12 songs, I think it moves through pretty quickly. You're kind of just getting into it, and next thing you know, you got song 4 or 5. It seems to move very quickly, and maybe that because it's very up tempo, but the songs are so cohesive and tight and well done for what they are that it just seems to really move by very quickly. It's a good mix of tempos. Also, there's some fast, there's some smooth, there's fast, and then there's smooth. It seems like there's a nice, good balance of like up and down through the whole album. Um, I really like the artwork and the packaging as well, of course. Um, when I think of the opportunities for the album, the last third of the album, the last 3 songs, or last yeah last the last is that the last fourth of the album? Excuse me. Um, it loses a little bit of steam for me. Young Offender, One in a Million, and Go West are probably my least. They're yeah they are. They're my least liked songs from the album, and it's close, but so I do feel like the album kind of runs out of steam a little bit, but they're still really good songs. It's just they're not on the same level as I feel like the first 9 songs. Um, so I feel like that's a little bit of opportunity. Again, the analog equipment is mostly gone here. I've kind of missed that sound. I go back and listen to Actually and Please, and there's so much warmth there and emotion, and but that also comes from the speed of the songs. Like it's hard to have a lot of deep emotion in dance music when you're at 140 BPMs. Like, yesterday when I was mad must be like, I don't know, must be 140 BPMs. I wouldn't normally do this type of thing. Um, there's some really fast stuff on here. A different point of views, if I'm not mistaken, is pretty fast. Um, so it's hard to sort of have that warmth and that. I feel it's the better side of the Pet Shop Boys, in my opinion. It's just but for what this is, it's a great album, in my opinion. But it's not as good as Actually and Please, and I don't think anybody would really say that either. But I feel like I do have to kind of defend myself in in talking about an album that's really beloved by its fans. Um, Take this with a grain of salt, but some of the dance music on here is verging on techno and hasn't aged that well. Like Point of View, like the album, like the song A Different Point of View. It works well faster and with the new sound, but how would it have sounded 6 years earlier with the Actually album production? I think it would have been better. I think there's some really well written songs on here at a slower BPM with analog equipment. Would have been a little bit. It would have been really interesting. Let's put it that way. But that's all I'm going to say about that anymore. But because I'm focused on the album that it is. But I feel like it could have been a little bit different or better. But one thing I'll say is like, gone is the hipness feel of Pet Shop Boys, and like there was a one of the things I thought was really key about the early Pet Shop Boys was their persona and their hipness with DJ culture. Like Domino Dancing, the video. He's up there DJing with some records, and he's in sort of a dance club, and that Pananero feel, and like those songs, and Disco, the album Disco and stuff. Like I felt like they were really in touch with club music and dance music, and I really feel like around the new millennium with rave music, and it's, I think it would have showed earlier if not being boring, but if Behavior was a more album like this, I think it would have showed even more because that was kind of the turning point. But by '93, it was full on rave music in the UK, and I feel like they've sort of lost that urban appeal, and maybe that's because they're growing older and they're not going to clubs anymore and stuff like that, but I feel like they've lost a little bit of the funk, a little bit of their urban culture, a little bit of the even sort of the sort of rapping like on West End Girls and stuff like that, and also the more melodic side of earlier Pet Shop Boys as well. It's kind of there's so much upbeat going on here. There's really no ballads and really no time to catch your breath. It's just so it flows in a good way on a high energy dance music, but it doesn't flow as well as some of their earlier albums. And that's what's really important for me is to compare this album when I was rating it to the other albums, because I feel like to give it a proper score on some albums that are from some of my favorite bands like this is really important to do. But DJing has become clubby. It's not really the appeal that it was. I put this that they traded in their Timberland boots and vinyl records for Puma shoes and rave sticks, and that's kind of like what I feel in this album. They sort of the gone is their '80s dance music, and they're just really embracing the newer techno music out, and that would make sense for a dance group that's on the cusp of things. But I don't know if it was necessarily the best change, but it was certainly worth trying. But I think as the '90s went on, I think it would have been nice to sort of get back to what they were doing a little bit more so than keep kind of continuing forward. I just prefer that style, and I really liked the again talking about their persona, right, in the early days. Like you think of like Opportunities, right? The video, the lyrics, right? That was the first Pet Shop Boys song I ever heard. First Pet Shop Boys song most everybody heard, because I think that was before West End Girls, and it was still a hit. And I think they reissued it again, or because I can't remember if they released Opportunities twice, or they remixed it a second time, sort of like West End Girls. But I feel like Opportunities was out there a little bit before West End Girls, even though West End Girls was the song that they were working on first. But I think West End Girls was a little bit vague, and it was kind of like cinematic and them just walking in the streets like that. Like Opportunity was more their, from the lyrics and the video and stuff like that. It was, with the limo going by and, him looking like he's an accountant, right? And they're kind of like in the garage of this dusty, or not dusty, but like some kind of hotel, and they're making some sort of like deal, and I'm the smart guy, I'm the snobbish guy, and it's all about money, and you know what I mean. It's like they sort of had that snobbish attitude, and I really liked that kind of like it was unique, and it was different in that kind of persona, and you kind of fast forward 7 years to this, and they're wearing clown dunces on their head. Kind of, I wouldn't say they're looking like fools here, but I mean, they got dunce caps on their heads. Like, I think the fashion became too much for them, and that's probably a excuse me, that's probably a whole different story on another level. But I don't hate what they they made it into a show, and that's cool and everything. But as far as like the persona of them, I don't know what persona this really gives in. Like, besides you're being fashionable, and we all know that fashionable can be in and out really quickly. And I really like the persona of them sort of being like, of Neil Tennant kind of having that, that snobby, like, I'm, I'm a good writer, I'm this, and then you go to like something like the song Rent, right? I mean, he, the song is about some snobbish people paying him to, for rent, or him doing deeds for rent or something like that, which it's been a while since I heard that song to think about the exact lyrics, but the overall is, I love you, you pay my rent. So I guess it's more about the love part of that and just kind of dealing with it. So that person has a place to live. But that's kind of the aura of those songs. And there's obviously a religious part in there with It's a Sin, and, what do you have done to deserve this and stuff like that. But the early album, like Violence, like on Please, and a couple other songs that I'm blanking on the name. The one that probably should have been a single instead of Suburbia, in my opinion. But God, I'm blanking on the name. But that song is kind of has the same idea as Opportunities of. But it also had the Please had this sound on it that it was kind of like high life. Like, this is the nightlife like you want to have. Like, it's kind of like a new disco. It's almost like it's like, it almost like kind of appeared that they had a lot of money and they were out spending things, but it wasn't in a way where it was just like flaunting it. It was just like they're living the high life, and they're still looking for love, and they're really kind of I don't know how you say it, but it's kind of like they're still um, they're still honest about the ups and downs of finding love, and being out of love and all that kind of things, and and sort of money involved in that, and status, and culture and all those things, like, right. So it's like that's kind of like the whole, what I get from the whole Pet Shop Boys early first album. And then they kind of polished their sound into Actually, but I still feel like that's kind of like that sound. And then they're still done. By the time Introspect is, it's still a club album. And then Mr. Disco was, I mean, not Mr. Disco, the Disco album was in there as well. So they're still really tied to the dance community, and more the urban community. And I'd say more like the clubs of the day in those time. And then, and Very, it's kind of more towards, like raves and stuff like that. And I feel like the earlier stuff is it's for what it is. It's not. It's a little bit more. Um, I guess thin might be a word, or I can't think of the name, but vapid. Maybe it's not as like. It seems a little bit more hollow than. Even though I love the rave community and what it does, like when it comes to the Pet Shop Boys and their sound, and them being tied to urban music versus rave music, I feel like the rave side and this dance music side is a little bit more thin, and uh, maybe more vacant. It doesn't feel like it's like true. It feels like it's kind of like a show, and I don't know if that's because of the artwork and stuff like that too, and what they're wearing and stuff like that. But yeah, it's just you kind of think of the songs like Opportunity and Rent, and then on this album they're talking about dreaming of the Queen, or I wouldn't normally do this type of thing. It just doesn't seem like the Can You Forgive Her is kind of more in line with the older albums, but it's just like Dreaming of the Queen and the theater and stuff like that. It just seems like they're sort of matured to the point where it's not really snobbish anymore, or them being just, and it's sort of being kind of elitist and kind of high class, and maybe not as tangible or relatable to the early stuff. For what it's worth, and that's me kind of thinking just about and maybe I'm putting too much thought into a dance band. It's just but I do like the Pet Shop Boys a lot, and I do feel like I wanted to explain like my thoughts on their older music and their older persona being a better version than their newer one. Um, so that's kind of my overview on the good and the bad of the album. As far as like some of the songs, the first single was "Can You Forgive Her," which here's the vinyl version. If you don't have the single version, definitely check out the 1993 remix to I Want to Wake Up, which is one of my favorite songs from. Actually, love that melodic song. It's just great, and the remix is really strong. But the Rolo dub on "Can You Forgive Her" is really like a sick, minimal kind of house and techno track. Um, yeah, Johnny Marr remixed I Want to Wake Up." Pretty cool. But also Mark Kitchen's on here as well, which he really strong house producer back in the day. But yeah, so "Can You Forgive Her?" I think it's in some ways it's kind of an underrated song. The verses are good. The bridge is really good. And the chorus is actually the kind of okay part about the song. It kind of gets a little repetitive. All it does really is say, if I'm not mistaken, is it just kind of is a little bit repetitive. I can't remember. It just says "Can you forgive her" the whole time, but no, I guess it doesn't. But it is kind of repetitive. But I feel like the bridges and the verses are a lot better than the chorus, in my opinion. But that's very small. Still a 4-star track in my estimation. I think it's an excellent track. I wouldn't normally do this type of thing. Do this kind of thing was the second single. This is the CD version right here, the single. If you don't have the CD single version, there's 2 reasons to get this. This has a great remix of "Violence" with JJ Cale playing guitar on it. Oh, just it kind of turns a raw dance song into a little bit more classy groove. And then also, I think it's the Sasha remix on here is pretty good. Or I'm sorry, it's the Wild Pitch stuff. The DJ Pierre stuff on here is 2 remixes from DJ Pierre, who kind of invented kind of the wild pitch kind of house sound. In my opinion, he's on here. His 2 remixes are good. Sasha's remix is okay. It's kind of more trance. But I wouldn't normally do this kind of thing. It's a little bit too happy. It sort of reminds me of music off the next album, like "Red Letter Day." It's just kind of like over the top, and I don't know. Just the bridge nearing the end is really good. It's certainly a catchy song, and I'm not trying to be negative in this review, but I'm trying to, because I still rate it 3 stars. I'm still saying it's a very good song, but it's almost like the good of this album, the good of these songs is kind of obvious. So I'm sort of pointing out some things that I feel like I don't maybe like as much about some certain songs, but still it's a 3-star track. It's a very good track. "Liberation" I like better. It's a nice change of pace. I really like. It's very smooth. The strings and I really like the strings. Um, but then again, most this whole album is catchy. I wrote catchy, but this whole album is really catchy. The melodic bridge is really cool. The track is somewhat overrated. I feel like on this album, and I give it 3 3/4 stars, so really close to excellent. A different point of view, 3 stars as well. Catchy, upbeat, probably the most techno track so far. Um, it is a little bit dated though. That the only thing that doesn't sound dated is Neil Tennant, and I think that's the tie in this album that makes it so successful and make it overall not so dated as it probably would, is because Neil's voice. It doesn't make me think the album's dated, but in a way, if you listen to the music closely, it does sound a little dated. But Neil is really the tying, the tie to everything, right? But the melody parts and the piano and the strings is really nice in a different point of view. 3 stars. Dreaming of the Queen, 4 stars. Great track. I like this pace better. Neil sings great in this range, a slower pace. Neil's voice is better. It sounds like Patience of a Saint, if you know that song from Electronic, kind of the same pace. Love that song from Electronic's album. Very underrated song. Chorus is one of the best on here. Dreaming of the Queen, 4 stars. The fourth single from the album, right? Yesterday When I Was Mad. There's some really good B-sides on here. Euro Boy and Some Speculation were really good. If you don't know if you like the Pet Shop Boys and you don't know their B-sides, please do yourself a favor and grab their double CD called Alternative that came out the year after this, 1996. It collects all their B-sides from their first 11 or 12 years, going all the way back to West End Girl's first B-side, and you'll be if you like Pet Shop Boys, you will be a higher level Pet Shop Boys. There's some amazing songs on there like A New Life, That's My Impression. Oh god, there's so many good ones. Some Speculations on there. Music for the Boys. Was it Don Juan? So many good tracks on there. I'm blanking on my favorite on there, but yeah, there's just so many good tracks on there. And there's also I always forget which remix I like on here. I want to say it's the Roth Zone remix, but also Junior Vasquez and Jam and Spoon on here. They do some good remixes of this song because it is a very techno song, probably the most techno song on this album, and the remixes are pretty solid. I think overall they're the most successful remixes of this album. Although Can You Forgive Her is a close second. It's almost like Pet Shop Boys took some E and then went clubbing on this track. On Yesterday When I Was Mad, it's still a great chorus, still a good track, and in some ways, it kind of is an anthem. 3 stars. The Theater, it's so hard to pick a favorite track on here, but this one is really close. It's always the one that I think of, but I got it 4 stars. It's dramatic. One of my favorite verses sung on here. The bridges and the chorus on the last section are just phenomenal. 4 stars. 1 and 1 make 5. Track number 8. It's kind of a house music feel on this one. The verses of the bridge are really nice, and the chorus, I could loop the chorus all day. 3.5 stars. Speak as a Sin is kind of my most underrated track on here. 4 stars. Excellent. Smooth. One of the best sounding beats. Actually has a groove because it's not faster, which I really appreciate. The strings are epic. It kind of reminds me of like Only the Wind or To Face the Truth on Behavior, right? Which are great songs. So this is kind of an underrated song on there that kind of reminds me of those, which is great. I just said More Like This, Please. I wish there was like another song or two like this on this album, and just to kind of break up the flow a little bit. But Speak as a Sin, 4 stars. And then the kind of the opportunity of the album, the last 3 songs, the last quarter of the album. Young Offender's pretty good, 2.5 stars. It's a good track for sure. I like 1 in a Million a little bit better, 2 3/4 stars. But those are only my only 2 tracks that are below 3 stars. Go West, I respect a lot. It's a better version than the Village People. They kind of made it their own. Like Pet Shop Boys are so underrated about doing cover songs. When you think about it, you're like, oh, they did Always on My Mind. Oh, they did Where the Streets Have No Name. Oh, they did It's Alright. You know, I mean, they did Go West. Like, you know, I mean, they can do really good cover songs and make them their own. I don't think there's probably any better dance cover song than Always on My Mind. Like, I mean, to turn that into a dance song and it be that successful and be that good and it's I mean, an amazing song. I really respect Go West, but you know, I give it 3 stars. I think it's a very good song. But it's a Village People song. It's like, you know, like how good could it be? You know, like I'm not gonna say it's 4 stars or something like that, but I think it's very good. For the cover version especially too. But it's probably a song I'll never play. Oh, I forgot to say I did it. Here's the single. I was buying everything at Pet Shop Boys then. Is there any reason to buy this single? Uh, Kevin Saunderson's remixes are okay. Kevin Hiller's versions are okay. But if you don't if you don't want to hear the original one, like I don't necessarily do, I don't come back to this. Um, but yeah, that's my overall thoughts on the songs. So wow, four songs over 4 stars that are 4 stars that I could not pick a better track out of the four. Can You Forgive Her, Dreaming of the Queen, The Theater, and To Speak Is a Sin. I gave them all 4 stars. I didn't feel confident about saying one was up to the point of 4.5 stars. I don't think none of them are on that level. Maybe some of them could have been 4.25 stars if I said one was better than the other, but I think they're all 4 stars. So I kind of left them all at 4 stars. But 6 tracks are also very good. Must be missing one here. Oh yeah, okay. So there's 2 stars in it. There's 2 tracks in the 2 stars. So 10 of the 12 tracks are above very good. Very is a very good album for sure. Yeah, when I add up the stars and divide them by 12 songs, 40 stars and 40.5 stars divided by 12 is a very solid 3.37, which took it in the close to probably around 77, 78, 79, somewhere around there. I pushed it over the top because it is a really it's a really personal album for me, and I do really like a lot, and I think a lot of great things about it. I gave it an 81 out of 100. I think it's an excellent album. It's on the low side of it though. You know, for what it is, 81 out of 100. You know, not as good as Please, not as good as Actually, not as good as Behavior, but it's probably always will be the fourth best Pet Shop Boys album. If I review any other Pet Shop Boys albums, I just told you that I won't rate any of those higher than those 4. So no spoiler alert on those though. I'm not surprised to probably feel that nobody else would feel that either. But yeah, 81 out of 100. Great album. A lot of memories with this album. 1993, 17 years old. Wow. Makes me feel old. All right, thanks for listening.